Ted Churchill, and this is Jerry Hallway. Together we have 18 years operating the Steadicam system. We've worked on numerous feature films, commercials, industrials, and rocked videos. On the tape, we're going to demonstrate Cinema Products' new Steadicam EFP system.
First, we're going to show you how it works, and then we're going to show you how to set it up and balance it. By the end of the tape, you'll have everything you need to operate the EFP.
The handheld camera is a wonderful cinematic device. It's incredibly mobile. Anywhere you can walk, you can do a shot. It's exciting, it's also intimate. The problem is it has one inherent liability, and that is that it's unstable. The moment you take your first couple of steps, all that movement as an operator is now transmitted through the lens. The Steadicam EFP both allows the operator the incredible mobility of a handheld camera, but also provides the stability, the precision, and the elegance of a dolly. This is accomplished in 4 ways. First, the center of gravity of the camera is moved outside the camera where it's accessible to the operator. This is done by means of a counterbalance attached to the camera by a long center post. Secondly, a 3-axis gimbal is employed that allows the operator to pan, to tilt, and also, on occasion, to roll. Thirdly, this whole camera unit, which is what we call the sled in the camera, is suspended in neutral gravity in space by means of an articulated spring support arm. As the operator walks or runs now, as that vertical movement is transmitted to the camera, it is dissipated by the time it gets to the end of the arm. Finally, instead of using the conventional viewfinder, because this would actually defeat the isolation of this unit from the operator, a video monitor is used to view the picture. Now, there's a couple of things I might mention to you. The first is that the skill of Steadicam is not easily learned. It takes some practice. It is totally unique. The more practice you get, the better off you're going to be, the better your shots are going to be. The other thing is, incorporated into this skill is understanding how to balance this unit. If the unit is balanced correctly, your shots will be amazingly precise. If it is not balanced, if you don't understand how to balance the unit, they're going to be marginal at best. A lot of the tape that we show you is going to be about balancing and trimming the unit correctly. But you'll enjoy it. Stay with it.
You've seen how the Steadicam works when it's all put together, and now we want to show you some of the individual components. This is the docking bracket, this is the battery, and this is what we call the sled with a monitor attached.
Here is the operator's vest or the operator's suit, not to be called a brace for obvious reasons, and what we call the articulated spring support arm. We're going to show you each of these components in detail, show you all the switches. But before we do that, let's just look at the docking stand and the docking stand mount, because it's important that when you put this up that you put it in a place where it's going to be safe and it's not going to be knocked over.
This is a standard C stand, and we've added a sandbag at the bottom to keep this thing from falling over. And we tighten up the knuckles real good and tight. Adding the docking mount. Several important parts. We've got a hook here to hang the arm on. Got a balancing stud, this little 5/8 stud right here. And the camera, the sled will hang right inside here, and this is the aircraft pin that will keep it from falling out. It's going to be a little bit awkward from this side, but I want you to see it. Place it in. And in it goes, more or less. There we go. Get that out of the way, and you're ready to balance the camera.
Now, when you do this, it's going to be necessary to put on all the components and accessories that you're going to be utilizing with the camera. If you have an onboard battery, that includes putting the battery in the battery holder and back, for example. Now, a possibility is taking this battery off entirely. The EFP sled will run the camera and the monitor by itself, so that if you desire to have less weight, which is obviously desirable, in most cases you can pull this battery casing off and run it right off the 4-pin cannon. But if you're going to put this battery on the camera, the onboard battery goes in here first before you balance. Now, for the sake of balancing, you certainly want to make sure that you have your cassette in. If you're working with film, that means you want to have the film in the magazine. If you're doing film as well, you'll want to put on the video assist. This one's particularly weighty, so that will make a difference. If you're running any of the lens functions like focus, iris, or zoom by remote radio control, you'll want to put on your servo motor system. So once you have all your accessories on here, which let's assume that we do, rather than do all these things, let's assume that this now has everything in it. Let's find the center of gravity of the camera, and Jerry, maybe you could help me with this one here.
You want to take the post out of your arm, that's the most convenient thing we have, and place it underneath your tripod adapter.
Now keep in mind, by the way, just to mention, is that you want to put this adapter plate on here. You can't mount this camera on the Steadicam without this plate. You must have a flat plate here, unfortunately. So we're going to put this on, and we're going to roll this post until we find the center of gravity. Now, if we put it here, you'll find that the front of this drops. So let's move the camera back a little bit until neither front nor back drop down. That's basically the CG.
Right, you just want to get it close, not terribly precise, just close. And make a little mark for it.
So now we have the fore and aft center of gravity of the camera. Now, what do we have to do next? We have to do the side to side. So I'll take this post and I'll rotate it 90 degrees to the right, run the post fore and aft, and now we have the ability to find the center of gravity side to side.
It's a little harder to find, but usually it runs down the center of a video camera, or very near the center of a video camera.
As you can see, we've already marked the center of gravity with this white tape, so now you know, fore and aft and side to side, where the center of gravity of the camera is. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to mount what we call the C plate onto the bottom of the camera, and this will permit us to marry the camera to the Steadicam.
Okay, you want to mark the corresponding place on the bottom of this tripod adapter where the center of gravity was. And we've got the fore and aft down the center, and we've got this little piece of tape we're going to add, just matches up with the one we've already found. And now we want to attach your clamp plate, your standard clamp plate, somewhere over this. And the proper place to do that is so that somewhere near the back center of the plate is approximately over the mark that you've made on the tripod adapter plate. And we'll find a place, one of these holes, and look at the plate, plate's full of little holes, and we'll try and find one that matches up with a hole that's already built into the tripod base. And with the video camera, you want to get one of the most forward hole you can find that works, rather than one of the rear holes. So, I think just a little further.
Like so?
Yeah.
Okay.
And pop it in there.
Now, when you put this plate on, make certain that the plate is aligned fore and aft and squared up with the camera, because you'll find, especially the better you get at operating Steadicam, if that plate is off a little bit and the camera is pointed off to left or right, that will adversely affect your operating and the feel of the whole unit. Now, since we only have one screw in here, it might be worthwhile to put double-face tape between the clamp plate and the base of the camera, so that as you're shooting during a day, if this gets hit, or just from general use, it doesn't swing like this, off like that. So align it. Now, the other reason you'll need to have this perfectly aligned is there's going to be a servo motor on the end of this rod, and this servo motor is going to mesh with a very fine-tooth gear on the lens, and if this plate is off, it's not going to ride correctly on the gear. So that, be quite accurate about this, perhaps put the double-face tape in, and then torque the hell out of it. Okay, neato. So now what we've done now is effectively provided the ability to marry the camera to the Steadicam mechanically.
What we'd like to show you now is the sled and all its component parts. We'll start at the top and work down towards the bottom. At the very top is what we call the clamp plate, which comes off. There's a safety screw that prevents it from riding backwards. It's real important when you have the camera on there. The safety screw engages in this slot here, right along here, and that's what prevents it from going back. And on the other side of the clamp plate is this rack here, and that's what we use to finally position the camera fore and aft. This is a little gear that rack engages in. If you see, I turn it right here, and that's what gives us our fore and aft control on balance and trim. Next to that is the lock for the clamp plate, and you just tighten that down. That clamps down on the dovetail. Okay, and on the back of this, right here, is a vernier so that we can get side-to-side adjustment, very fine control of side-to-side adjustment. You can see how that works. It's plate's moving that way, and the upper stage is moving now to your left. On the front of this stage here is what we call the J box, or the junction box. On the front of the J box are a number of connectors. There are 3 connectors for your focus, zoom, and iris motors, a connector so that you can attach to the zoom motor that's part of video cameras, an on-off, film on-off connector, allows you to turn your film camera on-off without reaching up there and disturbing your balance, and an auxiliary 12-volt output connector so that you can run, say, a video transmitter or something like that. On the inside of the opposite side of the J bracket are a BNC in, so that if your video camera, this is where the signal will go to feed the monitor. You've got 12 volts out if you want to power your video camera, which is generally the way you'll do this. Or if you want to power your film camera, you can power it through this Canon connector here. You've got a bubble level to help you know where level is, and yet another connector that is the J7 connector that goes from here down to the J7 control on the gimbal. The wiring is conveniently located inside the post and connects directly to the bottom of the unit. This is what we call a center post. It's expandable, and the main feature here is this 3-way gimbal that has 3 axes of rotation. There's one there, one here, and one here. And these 3 axes of rotation allow the support arm to have no influence on the sled. It can move up and down on the center post. Loosen the clamp here, can move it up and down here, which is critical for your operating and for balance. We'll just leave it here for now. Right below that, down here, is a clamp that allows you to extend or shorten the center post. Shorten it up a bit here. On this electronics box is a battery indicator, a switch to turn on and off your remote focus system, an on and off switch for your monitor, and a circuit breaker. That's how to pop it. That's off. That's on the circuit breaker for the whole system. On the other side, turn that around, move the monitor out of the way. Right here is the connector that goes to the monitor. This is another auxiliary connector for, say, a video transmitter, and another auxiliary 12-volt output. There are 3 BNC connectors here, 2 video outs and a video in, and a termination switch. Somewhere along the line you're going to want to terminate your video. You're either going to do it here or by adding an accessory that terminates the video. Down below this electronics box is a connector on the front side for your wireless control receiver. Bring it around. This is your connector for your brick battery, Anton Bauer brick battery. Just place that in there. There you go. All right, now let's take a look at the monitor. Okay, this piece right here is called your monitor support arm. It allows you to position the monitor high or low. The monitor will rotate around for low mode and for other things. Okay, we have a connector here. It's what we call the eyebrow, just flips right up. Okay, here are the parts to the monitor. We have a bubble level down here to help you keep level. We have a brightness control. Looks like that. And we have frame line controls that allows you to set TV safe action area, or say if you had a wide lens there. There we go. There's one more adjustment that we need to tell you about, and it's at the base of the center post. There are 2 screws here and 2 on the other side of the center post that allow you to move the base of the electronics here fore and aft for fine-tuning balance. When you add accessories and other things, the balance of the sled changes, and you need to be able to fine-tune that. This is not so important now, but as you gain experience, it will become important to you.
Okay, now that we've shown you all the components on the sled, let's mount the camera. Now, the first thing we'll do is we have taken off the plate off the Betacam, and we are putting the plate on with the clamp plate that you saw before here, before we mount the camera. This makes it a lot easier to put on the camera. It also makes it easier if you want to go to a handheld shot, just to pull the camera off rather than pull the whole plate off. Now, you see I'm sliding the dovetail in here. It's catching in this rack gear right here. And see the way it goes fore and aft like this? This is the way you balance fore and aft. Okay, that should be clear. Now, what I'm going to do now before I cut the camera on is I'm going to, one, lock this off so it will not rock back and forth. And critical in here is I'm going to tighten down what we call the safety slide back locking screw. This makes certain that if you tilt this up, this camera is not going to come off. Okay? So there we go. I'm going to lock it down again. And then I'm going to mount the camera. Very much like the M16. Okay, so now our camera is mounted. Check it, make sure that this whole thing is solid. Now again, you can loosen this. You can move the camera backwards and forwards to balance. All right, so now what we're doing with the camera on here, we're going to balance this out. And we're going to balance it so that the rig is slightly bottom heavy. That means this weight here and the length of this post is going to be a little bit larger, the combination of those, of the length of this and the weight of the camera. You want this slightly bottom heavy. Now, how do you do this? There are two ways. One, you can move the gimbal assembly up and down. The other way is you can actually extend and retract the extension post down here. So there are two ways. Generally, when you balance, which we call bottom balance or bottom weight balance this, you'll do it by sliding the gimbal up and down this center post. When you put the camera on and you get ready to start the balance, you want your gimbal reasonably high so that your weight is going to be down below here. Or you want this post reasonably extended so that when you put this on the stud, we're about to show you this, the thing will not want to turn over. All right, now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this unit, and you see it has the battery in it, so it has everything on it that you're going to use, and I'm going to take it off the docking stand, and I'm going to spin the docking stand around, and I'm going to put it on the balancing stud that Jerry showed you before on the back. Now here I go. I pull the aircraft pin, and I hold this up. Fortunately, this is quite light. And I turn this around, and here now is your balancing stud. Right here. I take the gimbal yoke with the hole, and I put it in the stud like this. Now, here again, you have to make sure that your stand is secure. You have a stand bag on it, because this is a lot of weight hanging off the end. Now, just from feeling this, I can feel that this is top heavy. And it's also front heavy. Now watch this. It wants to go to the front. So the first thing I might do is just move this camera back a little bit. Okay, now we know fore and aft were reasonably, see that's free floating now. We know that fore and aft were reasonably balanced. Now we also know that side to side were reasonably balanced, but I also know that it's top heavy because I can feel it wanting to turn over. If I let this go, now, this will want to turn over. There it goes, see? This is the gimbal handle assembly right across here, and it loosens by means of a small Allen screw right here. Now we're going to loosen this up. Now, it's critical for you to remember that when you loosen this screw up here, that this is perfectly horizontal along here, because what will happen is, if it is not, this will want to slide, this gimbal will want to slide, and it can go very fast, and if your finger's in there, you've got a big problem. So keep it always horizontal. Now, Jerry is holding the end of this. Do this with a friend. The first couple of times you do this, have them hold the Steadicam on the bottom so that it remains level as you adjust the gimbal assembly up and down. Now, you see me doing that like this. Okay, you can let go now, Jerry. So your friend lets go, and now you can see. Now, see, it's wanting to drop here, and what that means is it's a little top-heavy. So I'm going to slide the gimbal up. Now, it's just about balanced correctly. Now, I'm going to slide it up a little more because I want it to be slightly bottom-heavy. Now, why? I want it to be slightly bottom-heavy because if I left it alone, it will always want to come back to face center, come down and seek a level where it's straight ahead. So I'm going to add a little bit of bottom weight to it. Now, you see it's starting to drift down to the bottom. Watch. Now, I'm not going to let this go much because this gimbal will slide right up here. So before I do anything and demonstrate this, I'm going to lock this off again. Now, watch this now. This is very slight bottom weight here. Okay? Now, you also may have noticed that when this goes down, it also goes to the side a bit. See how it's going to the right? What that means is it's telling you something else, which is it's a little bit right heavy. So I'm going to move the side-to-side camera mounting platform just a little bit to the left side. So this is telling you two things. It's telling you by how long it takes to come back to center. It's telling you how much bottom weight you have. And it's also telling you whether or not you're balanced side to side with the camera. That's not bad. It's a little bit to the right. Now, it should take about 3 seconds for this to get back upright. Here we go. Let's try it. 1001, 1002, 1003. So that's basically the kind of bottom weight you want. It's better to have less bottom weight than more, because the more bottom weight you have, the more this device will want to pendular out when you come to a fast stop or you make a fast start. The less bottom weight you have, the more you can feel the rig and feel the unit, the more articulate you are with your hand and the better touch and better feeling. So try to keep the bottom weight very slight. It's deceptive because if you put a lot of bottom weight in here, it feels extremely stable in the roll axis, so your horizon stays. But unfortunately, there are a lot of secondary characteristics this creates that everyone has found over the last 10 years to be highly undesirable. So keep the bottom weight slight so that so you can get a good, nice, clean feel of what it's doing. Okay, see this now here? Now, there's another way to add bottom weight or subtract it, and over here, I'm going to loosen up the locking collar that keeps the extendable post from going up and down. Now, I'm lengthening. Do you see this now? What I'm doing is I'm lengthening the post. All right, and I'm going to lock that off again. Now, you want to lengthen the post for a couple of reasons. It makes it a little bit slower, a little bit more stable, a little less hot roddy if you have a longer post. When it's very short, it's very quick and very fast, but it doesn't quite feel as stable. Now, what that's going to do is move this weight way out here from the gimbal, way far away. So you're going to find we have a lot more weight further away. We have the same amount of weight further away, and it's going to take less time to come back up to level. Watch. 1001, 1002. Too much bottom weight. So let's do this. Let's say we want the post this long. Let's lower the gimbal to get the gimbal closer to the weight on the bottom. And this will give us less bottom weight. So you see me moving this now. Now that's perfectly in the center of gravity. I'm going to move it up a little bit just so I have a little bit more bottom weight. A little bit more. Bingo. Lock it off. Always lock it off. Okay, so now this is locked. The post is locked. Let's watch it come back, and it will take about 3 seconds. 1001, 1002, 1003, and it did it. Okay, so that's the deal on that. Now, let me just show you one other thing. This is the first time we've actually had this thing flying on a stand. But let me just show you these functions. Here is the camera pan, function 1 of the 3-axis gimbal. Function 2, not surprisingly, is tilt. And of course, with tilt, you have the ability, it's wonderful for architecture, to be able to shoot straight up. Okay, and axis number 3, generally undesirable, is roll. Most of the time when you're operating in pan and tilt, and you're controlling the roll.
This is the EFP vest, which is designed to take the weight of the Steadicam and distribute it evenly over your body. Down here we have the socket block, which is where the arm attaches to the vest. And there are a couple of screws here for personal adjustments on exactly the way you want that arm to lift. We'll get to that when we bring the arm along. This plate here can be reversed on the Steadicam, and that's for another way of operating. This is the first kind of operating we call left side operating. Flip it around, it's called right side operating. We'll show you that later on. The center spar here attaches to the breastplate by a clamp arrangement, and we can collapse the size of the vest or extend the size of the vest depending upon your height or the length of the upper part of your body. I'm about 5'9", and I have it not quite fully extended, but about that long. And that's a good place to start. If you're shorter than me, squish it down to start. All right. There are straps which are adjustable. We'll talk about the shoulder strap first. That's not an adjustable one. It opens up this way on the left side. It's an under the arm strap that goes here, and you adjust it by using this Velcro. And there's a hip strap or waist strap with a quick release on it here. Okay. On the back of the vest is some Velcro that keeps it together, and you want to make sure this is nice and flat when you put it together for the first time. And this, when we pull the quick release handle, will separate and allow these pieces to fall right off. All right, and I'll put that right back together now. At the bottom is a little pad that goes in the small of your back. and that also has a quick release function on it, and we'll show you how that works in a minute. The important thing is that this pad ends up in the small of your back, centered in your back. Right. To put it on, slide your right arm through the hole here. Don't put it over your head. Slide the right arm through your hole, get these pads organized, and then lean forward, and this left shoulder pad will come up. Get it squared on your body, and take the left under pad and hook it on here. Now this has been adjusted pretty well for me, but I want to push this down so that this feels centered, and I keep looking down to see if it's centered on my body. All right? And you don't want this whole thing to roll forward. If it rolls forward, that will distort the way this socket block supports the arm, and will give you trouble later. So this should be pretty tight. You want to be able to breathe, but it shouldn't be able to roll forward. When you attach the pad in back, I'll turn around and show you this. The pad should be in the center of your back, so loosen it on the right side till it's in the center. Tack it down, and then reach over here, loosen up this clip, put it together, and pull it tight. Now take this one, and you're set to go. Now we're going to demonstrate the quick release feature, and Ted is going to help me by being the weight of the camera.
Okay, keep in mind you have another 40 or 50 pounds hanging off here. One thing we've got to mention, and it's extremely important, is that if you're going to be shooting in a dangerous situation, meaning you're shooting around the edge of a swimming pool, by the water, on a sailboat, you're being chased by wild bison or whatever it is, and you think there's a chance you may have to get out of this thing and get away from something, you must check to make sure that the quick release feature works before you start working that day. This is critical. This is a safety thing, and we take it very seriously. Okay, so always check to make sure this works. We're going to do this right now for you. Here we go. I'm providing the weight of the camera. We're going to turn Jerry around so you'll see the way the vest opens up and back as he pulls the quick release. Ready? Okay. We've just shown you two of the three basic components of the Steadicam EFP. The third one, and perhaps the most important one, is the articulated spring support arm. This arm is a springed arm, which is designed very much like a human arm. As you see here, it has a what would be considered to be the elbow, and it swings thusly. Now, this arm has two functions. The first function of this arm is to support the EFP sled and the camera in space, very much like an object in space, floating in space. The second function of this arm is to take the vertical shock and movement of the operator's body, which you see very much in handheld photography, this bounce. And as it's translated through this arm and gets out to the end of this arm, it becomes dissipated by a series of springs in here. And this is the real genius of the Steadicam system, is this here arm here. So that the arm attaches to the operator's vest thusly and tightens down with these two screws. There are some adjustments we'll get to in a little bit. The spring tension in the arm is adjusted by 4 Allen screws, one in the end of each of these bones, of which 2 comprise each section. You can tell the strength, the adjustment of the arm in the springs through this little window, this little cutout here, and there is a silver collar that moves up and down as you turn this screw to adjust the strength of the springs. In its maximum strength, this silver collar will be right up toward the top here. In its minimal strength, you'll see the silver collar is down toward here. You have the ability to put tape on here and mark the strength for various cameras, because you'll be wanting to change the tension on these springs as you change cameras that have different weights. A Betacam 300 is vastly different than a first-generation Betacam. So you will be constantly adjusting these. Now, keep in mind that when you adjust these springs, you're 2 adjustments per section, and this is the section. You want to adjust these equally so that in this part of this particular section, if this silver collar is in the center, the silver collar on the opposite part of this section will also be in the center. It's not good to have these great variants in the tension of the springs here, and here. All right, so now you have one section here you'll adjust, and a second section in here. Again, 4 of these screws, the windows with which you can tell how strong the arm is. Now, I want to point out 1 or 2 safety features of this arm which you should be apprised of. The first one being that this has stops, you will notice in here, on each of these sections. Some of the older arms don't have these. But it is possible, you'll notice that when I push down, this is what the weight of the camera will do. Now you see how much space there is in this arm. It is possible, if you had your fingers in here like this and let the weight off of this, you could crush your fingers. It makes this less possible with these stops, but it's still an issue. When you're operating, never get into the habit of putting your fingers in between what we call the bones here. Keep your fingers away from these. Now, when the arm is freely mounted on the vest without the Steadicam on it, another problem is a swinging arm like this. Now, if you let this arm alone, your assistant may be in back. You can very much get, it's very easy to knock someone's teeth out with this. So that generally when you're wearing this arm, you want to keep a hand on it all the time like this, and it's also very comfortable, so that you'll find yourself doing this. Don't let this swing freely. Also, if you're putting a coat on or something, you don't want to lift up your shoulder and have this come and hit you in the face as well. So there's a couple of safety features you should be apprised of in this. Okay. So you take the male part of the socket block and insert it into the female part that's attached to the vest. Tighten these 2 screws, because you'll see that this will rock back and forth. Now, that's an adjustment we'll talk about in a moment. But you want to tighten these down so that this is solid on your vest, and there's your arm. Now, here I'm going to take it off again. I loosen, actually, when you get the adjustments for these, you can only loosen, you only need to loosen 1 because it does rock. You grab it here with your 2 fingers on top and bottom, and you pull it out. In, out. In, out. At the end of the support arm, you'll see there are 2 holes in alignment here with a tightening screw here. What these do is they accommodate a post called the arm post that goes in here and tightens down. And this is the post that the sled and camera ride on through the gimbal yoke. Now, when you put this post in, make certain you tighten this screw down. You tighten this down. You don't have to kill it, but you should just make it like nice and snug, like so, because you don't want this post dropping out of here because your whole Steadicam is riding on it. Now, another thing about this post is you can raise the height of the camera by raising this post. So now I'll raise it up to here. I've added about 5 or 6 inches to the height of the camera, tighten it down again, and now the camera is riding up here. If you want the camera lower, you can use what we call a J bracket. This is primarily used for underslung or low mode operating, but if you want to get the camera about 6 or 7 inches lower, it is possible to put this in. Now, when you put this in, it's been found to be advantageous to clock this about 1 o'clock that way. So you see it's not riding straight, but it's actually like this a little bit. I couldn't tell you why that is, but trust me, it seems to work great. Now, again, I'm going to tighten this down, but just sort of like finger tight. All right, now your camera is riding, instead of up here, your camera is riding down here. You've added about, or subtracted about 10 inches from it. What many operators have done in the past, because they find the long post a bit unwieldy, is cut down a post to the size of this post here, and this is Jerry's here, and they operate in most instances with a post this size. Now, you notice when I put this in, I'm not putting it in with just this much of lip coming out, because it's got to sink fully down into the hole in the gimbal yoke to support the rig. So I leave about that much, 1.5 inches in there, or like that. Again, I'm going to tighten it down, just sort of like finger tight. And there it is. Now that completes the arm. This is the post now that the rig will ride in. And when you take it off the docking stand and put it back on, it's riding on this post. These adjustments of fore and aft and side to side, where the rig wants to go, are done through the arm and the vest with the socket block adjustments. And we're going to explain this to you now. Now, what we have done is we have taken now the socket block off of the vest, and here you see the plate here, and this will sit on the operator like this, as you saw before. And we have also taken the end of the spring support arm off as well. These two, as I pointed out before, marry to put the arm into the suit, and then you tighten these up. Now, you noticed before that I showed you the way this rocked back and forth. Now, you can probably imagine that's one of the adjustments that I was talking about. This is the fore and aft adjustment and external balancing. In other words, does it want to go away from you or does it want to come back toward you? Now, this is sitting on the operator like this, and this is rocking like this. Now, if you tighten the bottom screw, what you're doing is you're pushing this block so that it's forward away from you on the top. And I'm tightening this now, and I'm not tightening the top one. All right? Now this pin here is going away from you like this. What that will mean is the pin at the end of the arm, which is the post, will also be going away from you and force the object in space away from you in space. If you would like it to come toward you, you can loosen this up, tighten the top one of these adjustments, the 4S adjustments. Now you tighten this one here, like so. Now you'll see that this block is moving back, this pin is also moving back, and the post at the end of the arm is moving back as well. What this will do is force the unit back toward you. You'll have to push it away from you. So this is the way you adjust fore and aft in terms of where the unit wants to go, fore and aft in that axis. Now, just as you can adjust that with these two screws, with this rocking mechanism here, you also have the ability to adjust the side to side. Now, when I pull this apart, you will see on the arm socket block male part of this, you will see that there are two Allen screws right here on top and bottom, each of these on each side of this little point that goes in. Now, these can be adjusted. These are attached to these two aircraft screws that go and around this pin. Now, right now, this pin, these two are parallel and will remain so. This is parallel to here. As I turn, for instance, this top one, as you see here, I'm going to turn this out. You will see that this starts to move and extend, the top one extend. You can see this happening now. Now there it goes. Now I'm extending it out all the way here. That's about as far as it will go. It has a natural stop. You don't want to force it. Now what you'll notice is, if this is perfectly upright on you, this pin now is tilted this way. That means this pin is tilted this way, and it also means that the post at the end of the arm is now going to be tilted this way. What this will do, in effect, is it will make the whole camera unit go to the right. And you see now, to go to the right, what's happening is you are taking and pushing this pin out, the top of it, out to the right, and it will want to go to the right. Now, if I would desire it to go to the left, I would take this and I would tighten this up, which I'm doing. You see it go back in now? This is going back in. And I would do exactly the opposite, which is I would take the bottom one and undo it very much the way you'd undo a screw, which is counterclockwise. And you'll notice now that the bottom is moving out. Now, what is this going to do? This is going to do the opposite. Now this pin is leaning to my left, and the post will lean to my left, and the whole unit will want to come to my left. So now we have here the two adjustments for fore and aft, and also for side and side. One thing I mention as a caution is that when you go to adjust this, initially, whether you rent it or assuming you own it, you want to tighten both of these down to their maximum tight here, and you want to have this so that this is as close to this as possible. Then you decide, adjusting one at a time, which way you want to go. You don't want to keep adjusting this one out and then keep adjusting this one out, because eventually these may fall out or break. They're not that strong. So that you only adjust one at a time, and you start your adjustments by having both of these snug in as tight as you can, like so.
Now we're going to show you how to stand and walk and lean against the action of the sled. We're going to deal with the personal adjustments in the arm. We're actually going to set them up and show you how it works. And as an easy way to do this, I suggest that you get a bag or a sandbag, something like that, and put a few of them over the end of this post and use that rather than using the sled. The sled moves around a lot on the gimbal, and that can confuse you as to the very simple bit of how you stand, how you should stand. So you could use a bag, but we're going to use like this and hang it over the end of the arm, like that. But instead of that, we're going to use this specially made weight that we use in the classes. You could do this with the EFB. You could go right into the EFB. But my suggestion is this would be easier. You'll learn about how to stand in relationship to this thing much faster if you use the weight. Okay. The key here is that this weight, its center of gravity is somewhere in here, right? Your body has a center of gravity here, and your toes on the floor, and I'll move back a little bit here so you can see the full body shot here. Your toes are at a common center of gravity of this thing. And if this camera unit, or this weight now, moves away from you, you've got to lean back. Otherwise, you'll fall over, right? And as it comes close to you, stand up straighter so that weight is always over your feet. The feet are always fixed underneath the common center of gravity. Okay? Out, back. If it's over here, you got to lean away from it. If it's over here, you got to lean the other way. And it's not a big thing. And what you want to try and do at first is try and get this thing to hover in here. Now watch, if this thing is way out of balance, and I'm going to change my threads here so that now this thing has a tendency to violently go in that direction. And to keep it there, I've got to lean way, way back. Okay? Now take it back to what's normal. Crank it back up. You can see. These are my normal threads right here. And now the thing has a tendency just to stay there. If this thing was violently going off that way, I would change the threads in these two aircraft screws here to bring it back in this direction. If it had a tendency to violently go that way, I would change the other aircraft screw to get it so it would tend to be in here. Don't get too crazy about this when you first put this on, because your threads will change as you get better at this. Okay? But get it so it more or less stays in place. In fact, I mean, we can be quite good about where we place this thing with our balance. We can control it within, you know, a little tiny bit. But if your threads are wrong here, and these are personal adjustments, they won't be the same for you and the next guy. If these are wrong, you'll always be fighting this. Always be fighting this. And it's a lot of wasted energy.